Good morning, Dan and Amy. We profiled this gentleman earlier in the week because he had a front seat view to some Black Lives Matter protesting, which is really a bunch of snot-nosed white kids disrupting people trying to enjoy a meal at a restaurant in Dallas. His name is Damani Felder, and he's the founder of this popular YouTube program, The Wright Brothers. And he said something in providing the commentary as he was filming what was going on so the rest of America could see it that I really liked, picked up on. I think Trump could actually use to frame the messaging for the duration of the campaign. Listen.
Because they could not behave and handle themselves appropriately. And now they're throwing stuff. This is the anarchy that they want. This is what they continue to do. Listen to it. Now we're breaking windows.
This is what they want. This is what they continue to do. And think about the visuals. This is what they want. And you have visuals like Mr. Felder documented at that Dallas restaurant. This is what they want. And this is what I want for you, America. Or this is what they want. Is this what you want? Ask the question open-ended. I think it's a great conversation starter, and it's great political messaging. This is what they want is a simple insight. It's T-shirtable.
Right, exactly.
I'm going to trademark it before he does, so I can make all the money off of Damani Felder's insight.
This is what they want.
Damani Felder, founder of YouTube's The Wright Brothers, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
When you said this is what they want as you were filming what was happening at that Dallas restaurant, what did you mean?
What I meant was they want to continue to foment this social unrest and this social anarchy. When these protesters were out here in Dallas recently, they actually came to this restaurant and they interrupted and effectively shut down a black jazz band that was performing live music. We had people of all races, all nationalities, all ages who were out there enjoying a peaceful, beautiful evening. And that wasn't enough for them. They wanted to ruin an otherwise peaceful evening just because they wanted us to have to suffer for whatever happened with George Floyd. We're talking more than 6 weeks ago at this point. So it's just very disconcerting, especially seeing the way they were willing to comport themselves around young black children. There were black families who were there at this restaurant as well, who were patrons, and their night was ruined as well. So the question really begs the question, what was the point of that if all they wanted to do was shut down the entire establishment?
Well, that is what's their end game? What would make them happy to make this stop?
That's the thing. The goals need to be smart. They have to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And the goals of Black Lives Matter as they stand today are inherently arbitrary. They say that they want to deconstruct things like the Western prescribed notion of the nuclear family, which makes zero sense because we know that one of the biggest problems in the African-American community is fatherlessness. But it seems more that what they want to do is they want to continue to have an excuse to act the way they've been acting for several years at this point. All they're doing is glomming on to and exploiting whatever is happening in the current political space and then weaponizing that and trying to use whatever's happening currently as a justification for their wanton and indiscriminate outrage.
It seems to me it's pretty simple what they want. They want power, and power is open-ended, and it comes in a lot of different forms, and they figured out that the claim they lay to obtain power, whether it's financial or political, is victimization. And they find that you have big city mayors and other elected officials that will relent, that will appease in the face of that, in the face of those claims on that basis.
Well, you know, and Black Lives Matter as an entity actually is a contradictory and disingenuous organization because if Black lives did matter, they would be just as incensed when any innocent Black life was taken. As we saw in Chicago, there was a funeral home ambush that had 14 people shot just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And they don't want to go out in the streets and riot or protest for that reason, even though there are plenty of innocent people who were caught in the crossfire there. It really goes to show their true motive. It's not about Black lives. This is just about fomenting unrest. This is just about basically getting an excuse to go out and act however you would like to whenever you think you have the slightest reason or rationale to do so.
So, how are you received by fellow cohorts in your age group in the black community when you say the things that you say, like you documented that Dallas restaurant, like you do in your YouTube videos? What's the reaction?
It's still somewhat of a mixed bag because, unfortunately, the hive-minded mentality has taken hold in the African-American community. I do get a fair amount of vitriol, but I also get certain people who are willing to start questioning that narrative because people are starting to see Black Lives Matter for what it really is. And really, the veil has come off, and Black Lives Matter is just another wing of the Democrat Party that has continued to throw effectively a 4-year-long temper tantrum over the election of President Donald Trump. So the way they're acting, the way they and Antifa and the Democrat Party is acting, really is just it's very disheartening to see that they just cannot accept the results of the election, and they're willing to do anything in their power to wrest control away from President Trump, when he's actually done more than many other presidents in the past to actually reach out and try to demonstrate how much he wants to help the African-American community.
Yeah, and what can you just highlight some things that President Trump has done for the African-American community?
Sure. With the creation of opportunity zones, we're talking about the First Step Act, which actually released 93% of the people who were released under the First Step Act were from the African-American community. And also the appointing people like Lorna Malloch to be the Marine Brigadier General, establishing funding for the HBCUs in the amount of $250 million every single year, permanently and indefinitely. These are just a few of the steps President Trump has taken to really reach out to the African-American community. Not only that, but also just working on helping us acquire jobs that will help us break that cycle of generational disadvantage by helping to elevate our station in life. And the fact that people like members of the Congressional Black Caucus can't be troubled to stand and cheer when we did announce things like the historic low black unemployment rate, it just goes to show what their true agenda is, what their true mission is as an organization for the left and BLM as a whole, is just to continue to keep African Americans in a state of disadvantage so that we can always be relying on them for something every 2 or 4 years whenever there's an election.
And speaking of that, how did you receive Joe Biden's statement the other day in response to President Trump's Operation Legend expansion to other cities beyond Kansas City, including Chicago? Where Biden said, this is the first racist to be elected president of the United States. I took that as, and Bobby Rush, congressman from Chicago, saying that Trump is auditioning to be the Grand Wizard of the KKK. I took that to mean that they're very worried about Trump getting a percentage of the black vote on November 3rd that makes it impossible for Joe Biden to win, impossible for the Democrats to take control of the Senate, that, he may be from 8% in 2016 to 11, 12, 13%. And if he gets double digits of the black vote, that presents a real problem for them. What's happening in big cities can't be sitting well with a whole lot of black families who are subjected to this violence and to this unrest. Even if they support police reform and other issues, they still don't want lawlessness in their neighborhoods. They don't want their children jeopardized. And President Trump being law and order on this issue, as opposed to what those Democrats are offering, that's a real opportunity. They can't let people focus on what's happening in the cities, so they have to say, all you need to know is that Trump is a racist.
Exactly. It's a dumbing down of the rhetoric, but also an escalation of the rhetoric. And that escalation can be directly correlated to the panic that's setting in for the Democratic Party. For the last 4 years now, we've heard them vilify anyone who is an old white man as being inherently the worst of the worst. And then out of all the candidates they had run in the primary, they nominated an old white man, Joe Biden, to run against President Trump. Joe Biden, who was on record saying that he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle. You want to talk about someone who was auditioning to be the first, the Grand Wizard of the KKK. That was actually one of Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden's allies, Robert Byrd, who was a Grand Wizard of the KKK and who Joe Biden had nothing but good things to say about. So seeing how hypocritical the left really is becoming with their rhetoric, and also seeing how little they think of the average American who really does have all this information that I just mentioned available on their smartphones themselves, but who apparently would rather take what the Democrat Party is selling then investigate and do their own research to find out who the real racists are, because the real racists are demonstrably and incontrovertibly the Democratic Party.
He is Damani Felder. He is the founder of YouTube's popular program, The Wright Brothers. Damani, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time and insights.
Thanks for having me. I'll have a fantastic day.
Yep, you too. Thank you so much. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Issues of human suffering and societal injustice play incessantly on every outlet around us. Yet it seems like everywhere you turn, there are more unanswered questions and few honest explanations about why so many of our liberties are under attack. How do we regain order and a sense of normalcy? Find clear answers to the most important questions we face as a nation when you stream Morality in the 21st Century on Salem Now. This on-demand video discussion with syndicated media host Dennis Prager and distinguished theologian Dr. Wayne Grudem gives you a well-defined understanding about the enemies within our institutions and a vibrant roadmap to protect our God-given liberties. In Morality in the 21st Century, Dennis Prager and Wayne Grudem confront the toughest social issues of today by digging deep into